Matter's going to be great, right? Well, I've recently gone through the most painful experience of my smart home journey. For over a month, I wasn't able to add Matter accessories of any kind to my Apple Home, which is frustrating in general, and as someone who's eager to do product reviews for the channel and try out this exciting new smart home standard, this was definitely a very difficult situation for me. I can't count the number of hours I dedicated to resolving this situation. I'm used to troubleshooting pretty complex issues, and I'm good at working through most smart home challenges, but this one stumped me, Apple tech support, their engineers, and even a few brands who'd stepped in to try and help me. Luckily now it's working, but it did take rebuilding my smart home. Now I don't think the issue I was having is common based on the lack of content online from the HomeKit community, so hopefully it should be good. Through all the troubleshooting steps I took though, I thought there's probably some good tips that I can share that may help with other problems that you may be having in your Apple smart home. So I hope this helps. Matter is the new smart home standard that's been adopted by many smart home companies like Apple, Google, and Amazon. It allows for cross-platform use and increased compatibility. Instead of works with Apple Home, it just needs to say Matter, and you know it'll work with your ecosystem of choice. Matter has been years in the making, and it's finally here. This is especially a big deal for Apple Home users where product selection has always been significantly less than with other platforms. iOS 16.2 was released last December, and it temporarily allowed users to upgrade to the new Apple Home architecture with support for Matter. But that was quickly pulled due to various issues that users were experiencing. I did upgrade, and I also had all kinds of reliability issues. If you upgraded before the update was pulled, then that's fine, nothing changed, but users on the original architecture were unable to upgrade their Apple Home. This itself created some issues since some members of the home were on the new architecture and others on the previous one. For me, this created issues with Apple HomeKey and HomeKit secure video feeds, but it was temporary. 16.4 was released in April and fixed many of the issues that people were having, and everyone once again had the chance to upgrade their Apple Home architecture, which was supposed to bring increased performance and reliability, as well as that support for Matter. Finally, I was able to re-add all the members of my home. If you're noticing any pending invitations, then it's easiest to just delete the invitation and send a new one. My first Matter accessory was a Tapo smart plug. I included this in my Casa TP-Link video in mid-April. I was able to add it to Apple Home without much difficulty, and while it was very unstable when I started testing in January, it quickly became much more reliable. Next was my SwitchBot Hub 2 a couple of months later, and this is where the issue started. I've been testing this for a couple of weeks in preparation for an April 7th release, which I didn't end up releasing until May 15th, over a month later. The Hub 2 had been working a couple of weeks until it was suddenly unresponsive in Apple Home. If you're an Apple HomeKit user, then you know this isn't exactly the rarest of occurrences. If you're having issues with devices not responding, here's my standard process to fix the problem. First, restart. As simple as it sounds, it fixes most issues. Simply unplug the device or remove the battery and reinsert it. Second, if you have time, wait. Sometimes ignoring the issue will fix itself after a few hours. It seems to somehow just sync up. The third thing I would do for Thread devices is restart my primary Home Hub, though SwitchBot's Wi-Fi, so not needed in this case. I'll talk more about Home Hub soon. And as a last resort, reset the device. In my experience, this is usually a guaranteed fix if the previous steps didn't work. Resetting the device is different depending on the accessory, so refer to the product manual if unsure. Before resetting though, remove the accessory from Apple Home. Sometimes it does take a couple of minutes to fully remove. Once it's been reset, then add it back to Apple Home. In the case of my SwitchBot Hub 2 though, I wasn't able to add it back to Apple Home. I'm not exaggerating when I say I reset my device and tried re-adding it a couple of hundred times over just a couple of days, trying to get it back into Apple Home. Over and over, I kept getting that same error. Pairing with accessory failed. The SwitchBot Hub 2 uses Wi-Fi, so I also tried restarting my Wi-Fi router. Most smart home devices use the 2.4 GHz Wi-Fi band, so if you have whole home Wi-Fi that combines 2.4 and 5, then it's recommended to switch your Wi-Fi to 2.4 only when adding an accessory. In my experience, I'm usually able to add these accessories without changing my Wi-Fi, but just in case, I took the step to ensure I was on 2.4 only, which didn't help. So at this point, it seems pretty obvious. It's an issue with the device, right? I let SwitchBot know of the error, and I sent them a video so they could see that I was in fact taking the correct steps to pair the accessory to Apple Home, which added to the SwitchBot app just fine, by the way. There was some back and forth confirming some Wi-Fi information, and in the end, they concluded, just as I had, that it was an issue with the device and a replacement was on its way. In the meantime, some new Matter accessories arrived. I got a couple of Mara smart plugs and the Nanoleaf Essentials Matter light strip and A19 light bulb, which uses Thread, not Wi-Fi. I was in disbelief when none of these accessories would add to my Apple Home. It was the exact same errors with my SwitchBot Hub 2. It was clear my Hub 2 wasn't a dud, there was a problem with my Apple Smart Home, and this made me very nervous. So now what? In order for Matter accessories to work, iCloud Keychain needs to be enabled. So if you're having issues with Matter accessories, then this is something to look for. I tried adding from my iPad, same thing. I signed out of iCloud and back in. I deleted the Home app and reinstalled it. I reset my network settings, nothing. I mention these steps because they can all be useful in fixing some issues, but sadly, this didn't correct this issue for me. I also tried adding it from my wife's phone and my daughter's phone since they were members of my home, but that didn't work either. The error I got that time was actually different, saying that the accessory needed to be added by the owner of the home. This was an unrelated known issue that's since been fixed by Apple. Now let's talk about Home Hubs, an extremely important part of your Apple Smart Home. The Home Hub is what iCloud uses to talk to your devices and how it allows you to control your accessories remotely. This can be an Apple TV running tvOS or any HomePod or HomePod Mini. If you haven't upgraded to the new home architecture, then technically an iPad can also be a Home Hub as well. Some Home Hubs also include a Thread border router so you can take advantage of Thread accessories that don't use Wi-Fi or require a manufacturer hub like Zigbee. Most Thread products will also use Bluetooth for those that don't have a Thread border router, but Bluetooth is slower with shorter range. Examples of Thread border routers include the 2021 Apple TV 4K, the most recent Apple TV that includes Ethernet, the HomePod Mini, or the 3rd generation HomePod that was released earlier this year. You definitely want a Home Hub in your Apple Smart Home, and I highly recommend at least one Thread border router. In the Home app, you can see your Home Hubs by going to Home Settings, then Home Hubs and Bridges. In total, I have 18, which I know is probably more than most, but as long as you have one, then you should be good. The Home app then automatically assigns a primary Home Hub and puts the rest in standby. So they're there and they can help relay information as needed, but it's your primary hub that's doing most of the work. You can't choose your primary hub, this is done automatically. Some viewers have asked me about this and thought that they could choose. Unfortunately, you can't. Most of my Apple TVs are hardwired directly to Ethernet, so you would think that that would be the preference in Apple Home, but in my experience, it's totally random. Anytime you're having issues with your Apple Smart Home as a whole, not just a single device, then restarting your Home Hubs can be an effective step. I also mentioned this earlier with Thread devices. I find that if I have a Thread device that's not responding, then restarting the hub can help. But of course, this didn't work for me. I even disconnected all 18 of my Home Hubs and I tried pairing my Matter accessories connected to various hubs. Not all 18, that would be excessive, but I tried a couple of times with a couple HomePod Minis plugged in, a couple of different Apple TVs, and the new HomePod, but nope, nothing. So next, out of desperation, I factory reset every single HomePod and Apple TV in my house. I told you this took hours, right? Resetting a HomePod or Apple TV can sometimes fix issues. Usually this is more if you're having an issue with that particular device, like a HomePod that's maybe having network issues, for example. But like I said, I was desperate. After that didn't work, I started blaming my Wi-Fi. I mean, maybe. I reset my Wi-Fi router, and when that didn't work, I tried a different Wi-Fi router and then another. So it's pretty clear the issue wasn't my Wi-Fi router. Then as a last-ditch attempt, I contacted Apple support, which can be a necessary, but also frustrating process. Let me say that Apple support's great for general issues. They're friendly and they're helpful, but they don't know anything about Apple Home, at least the majority of them don't. One of the advisors I spoke to even said, "Oh, I've never used a HomePod, but I have one of those Alexa things." It took a lot of patience to politely explain HomeKit, tell them what Matter is, and go through the motions of completing their scripted troubleshooting steps that I had mostly already completed before being transferred to a slightly more helpful senior advisor. Over the course of a few weeks, I worked with several Apple advisors. Again, friendly and helpful people, they just aren't educated and experienced with HomeKit. Some were also not very good at following up when they said they were going to, which means having to call back and re-explain my issue. In my opinion, many of the advisors have no idea what they're talking about and want to stay as far away from the issue as possible. It can be worth the trouble though, because often it's an issue that needs to be escalated to their engineering team, which was the case for me. The reality is this can take a few hours with an advisor documenting all the details of the issue, going through all the troubleshooting steps that you've taken in order for that request to be filed. You may also be asked to install profiles and send logs to Apple to help their engineering team diagnose the problem. Apple sent me the files I needed to download and install on my iPhone and each of my HomePods and Apple TV. It can be a complicated process, especially with Apple TV profiles, but a good advisor will walk you through each of those steps. For all the frustration with Apple support, I'm so thankful for Sheila from the AppleCare outreach team. She wasn't as familiar with Apple Home in depth, but took ownership, walked me through the steps that were being requested by the engineering team, and frequently called me with updates. This would have been a very different experience without Sheila, and I can't tell you how much I appreciated not having to chase someone for updates. Many hours were spent with Sheila going back and forth with the engineering team, confirming some of my Wi-Fi information, asking me to delete apps that they felt may be conflicting with the provisioning of the devices into Apple Home, and trying various beta software versions. Of course, none of that really worked, and in fact, the final determination of the issue was very non-specific and unsatisfying. They believe it was corrupted memory within the settings of my home, and there was no resolution except waiting for a future update that could maybe fix it in the future. So in my opinion, they had no idea and thought, just wait, I'm sure eventually it'll fix itself, so deal with it please. Of course, I wasn't satisfied as Matter had just started to take off, and I wanted to get some content out on my channel. My list of Matter accessories that I was waiting to install had continued to grow, and I knew I couldn't rely on Apple support or wait for a future software update that may or may not fix the issue. At this time, I'd been working with Apple support for just over a month. As a test, I created a new home and I tried adding a Matter accessory, and oh my god, it worked. I'd never been so excited to see that magical screen that comes up asking which room to add the accessory to. But I had to temper my excitement because this was just a test home. I knew in that moment though what I needed to do, and I had been avoiding even considering this for so long. It was time to delete my smart home. It's an understatement to say I have a lot of accessories, not to mention all the scenes and automations that I've set up over the years, but it had to be done. I know many of you out there will appreciate just how difficult of a decision this was. If you're in a similar situation where you need to reset up your home, then take notes of your scenes and automations, maybe write them down, and make sure that you have your HomeKit codes for each of your devices. Almost always, it will be included somewhere on the device. There's also some apps like HomePass that can back up your codes. I use HomePass, but I'm not great at remembering to add it when I'm first setting up the device, so not really helpful, but maybe now I've learned my lesson. There are also some apps that can make the process of backing up and restoring much easier. I did a backup and controller for HomeKit, an excellent third-party app, but the only thing it restored was my rooms. You can back up scenes and automations, but there are various restrictions, like not working with Apple devices like TVs and HomePods. Also, automations only work if they're based on scenes and not individual accessories. And regardless, all accessories need to be reset and re-added into HomeKit manually. It was a lot of work, and even today, nearly 2 months later, I'm still not done rebuilding my smart home. Bridge devices are great though, because you just need to add the hub, like Lutron Caseta or Philips Hue, and all of their connected accessories come with it. I complain about this process because, like I said, it's a lot of work. But I have to admit, there's something that feels great about starting fresh. Some automations I just wasn't using anymore, they were outdated or unnecessary. It is a good idea to spend some time maintaining your smart home occasionally, and I'll link a previous video in the description on this topic. It can get out of control quickly, especially in my case since I'm often testing new products and creating automations just to see what a particular device is capable of. In the end, it was worth it, and my Matter accessories are now working. You can view your Matter accessories in the Home app or on your iPhone settings. Hopefully this isn't a step you need to take though. I still have noticed some issues where my Matter accessories are not responding, and this seems to happen when my primary hub is a non-thread border router. I have an older Apple TV in my den. It's a 4K model, but not the one with thread, and for whatever reason, my Matter accessories won't respond when this is my primary hub. When it comes to thread products, it shouldn't matter which hub is the primary, as long as you have a thread border router on the network. But even my Matter Wi-Fi accessories like my Go VM1 Lightstrip and Mara smart plugs, they won't respond either. I've reported the issue to Apple, and I'm sure it'll eventually get addressed. From what I've seen online, I don't see many other people reporting the issue, so it may just be unique to me, but something to try in case you're having this issue. This one's unrelated, but I've also noticed that sometimes my HomePods won't chime when my doorbell's pressed, and this seems to happen when my primary home hub is an Apple TV. Any Apple TV. To fix this, you can remove the Apple TV from HomeKit. That's all done through the settings of your Apple TV, and that will force your HomePods to always be one of your primary home hubs. Wow, it feels great getting this off my chest. It was definitely a stressful period for me, but I learned some troubleshooting steps to help me the next time I have a problem, and hopefully you picked up a couple of tips as well. The most unsettling part of the experience is the fact that to this day, Apple's still unable to diagnose the issue. While I'm glad it's working now, I wish they could have determined the root cause, and maybe it would have made the whole process a little bit easier to digest, and would give me more confidence that I won't be back in the same boat having to restart my smart home should I experience issues in the future. Have you ever had to delete your smart home and start fresh? If you have anything to add or share, then drop a comment so we can all learn from each other. Thank you for sticking around, and I really hope that you don't have to go through this one day. That's it for this week. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.